or national anthem, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Kangas?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Karki? Councilmember Becker?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Ilmanen? Councilmember Floyd?
Here.
Number 4, approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Smith, a second.
No, second.
Okay. Mr. Newman. All those in favor say aye. Against? Okay. Number 5, we got public comment, 3 minutes, 3-minute limit, so anyone that participate in public comment, feel free to step up to the podium and I'll give your name and you got 3 minutes. I'll take that as a no, so close public comment. Now, number 6, 2025 city budget, fee schedule, and capital improvement plan. So we will start with the capital improvement presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council. We'll start with the capital improvements plan, we do every single year. Again, this is just a guideline, the budget, including this capital improvements plan. Here are the major purchases that we're proposing underneath this budget for the 2025 calendar year. Some of these are carryovers from ongoing projects, and I will notate that. All right, here's one that's coming back from a couple years ago. We had a hard time getting anybody to bid on that. So one of the things we're trying to do is fund the cemetery gates. There'll be 3 of them that we're looking at trying to replace. And it's just these pillars, dressing them up or getting them painted and cleaning them up. That will come from the general fund. One of the things I will note is we were taking funds from the perpetual care fund, and that was improper. We should not have been allocating funding from that, so we will have to refund some funding from the general fund, an upcoming measure, and put back into that fund. Because what we can only do with the perpetual care fund is use any interest from that fund. So that's what makes it perpetual in the first place. So we'll be fixing that issue, and then moving forward, any cemetery-related expenses will come directly out of the general fund. One thing you will note here, you will not see in this presentation this year, is the removal of any trees in the cemetery. And so we sit down and talk to some folks about the status of those trees and kind of get an overall view of what trees should be coming down, what trees shouldn't be coming down, how to manage that asset a little bit better. In addition to that, as I proposed before, we would like to bring forward a new ordinance that creates a cemetery board that will help provide feedback to the council and suggestions on how to manage the cemetery further with public input. Here's one that we've been working on ongoing. This is our water meters phase 3. These are AMI meters that are hooked up. We got many of them hooked up now. The biggest issue that we're facing is that many communities are putting these in. COVID put this behind, and also with so many people buying these, it's put our order behind as well. So we're probably still another good 2 years, which would be next year and the following year, until this project's complete. Here's our AMI water nodules that go onto them. So they get connected to the electric meter, and they read back and forth the water and electric meters. You'll see in the next slide, or one of the slides coming up here. And this is just the thing that reads, that goes to City Hall. It tells you how much water's been used, how much electricity's been used, and then it also figures out the sewer situation for us as well. These are also behind production. We have allocated $50,000 in funding for valve and hydrant replacement. So we'll continue to move forward in replacing valves Again, remember, we've had issues with certain valves not turning, breaking because they're old, or because in the past we didn't have a valve turning program. We do now have that valve turning program. If you remember, our biggest valve issue we had was with the water tower. Those valves were in the 1960s, never replaced, really not turned on a regular basis if they should have, and that cost quite a lot of money to replace, especially under emergency repair. So we will continue to invest in valve replacement and hydrant replacement because it's important, obviously, so we can fight fires, and also so we can have working hydrants. So when we go to hook up to a fire, we can actually turn the hydrant on. Here's that electrical AMI that I was talking about. This is the other side of the token. A lot more of these are in. We're just popping those into place. And we're also behind on those because of the same circumstances. They're still making them, and a lot of communities are updating their systems because this is easier and more accurate over time. I'd like to invest in some more AEDs, specifically over the DPW and here at the senior center. We've already invested in a few of them. All of our police department vehicles have them, and over time we'd like to put them in all the city city assets or buildings that we have, just in case there's something that happens to any resident or visitor or our staff members. They are fairly cheap, obviously, to potentially save a life. And on top of that, we don't want to purchase them all at the same time because we don't want them all to die out at the same time. So this is just a payment. I believe we're going to be talking about this coming up at our next meeting next week. We had a bid successfully come in for the purchase of a new plow truck. So if the council does approve that purchase the next council meeting, we will see this go on the budget. It'll be a 5-year purchase. This year is the first purchase payment. And then for 4 years, we would pay that amount out of those funds for this vehicle. We'd like to do the other side of the library for carpeting. That side does not have the asbestos tiling, which is great. So we won't have to spend extra money on that. We've already investigated that side of things. That's the children's side of the library, so it'll probably be a little bit more colorful and creative type of carpet that will go over there if we are approved in the budget for this. And there may be some grants we might be able to obtain for this project as well. It's a small amount, $5,000, so hopefully we'll be able to obtain a small grant from someone. Sewer department, we're projected costing to use $350,000 in funding to repair these yellow sections you see on this map on sewer, and it's all over the city. And we also see in the red the street improvements, and we're going to go through the street improvements themselves. The sewer improvements are based on age issues that we're having in those areas. And every single space you see on there is where we also have bad streets. Again, we have a dig once policy and philosophy in the city of Negaunee, where we are not just going to pave a street when we know that there's infrastructure underneath it that needs to be repaired at the same time. So we're focusing on the infrastructure areas that are terrible, in this case the sewer ones, and in that case we are also going to get brand new streets out of it. So we will be using funding on the street side of things, you'll see, to pave sections of the street to help make or facilitate this project, while the sewer pays for part of the streets pavement and also replacement of the sewer mains. Here's one of the streets, Arch Street. Everyone has been waiting probably a lifetime for that to get fixed. And why did we do Arch Street last time when we did the other side of Arch Street, which was a lot nicer, going up to the school? Was because the grant we received would not allow for that section to be paved. And we didn't have the funding at the time to pave that section of road. So this section of road will be paved at $36,000. West Prince Street will also be paved, and we'll be doing some upgrades to some sidewalks and potentially some curbs. That's going to be a $30,000 investment. Hungerford Street, over by the football field. We are going to be making quite the investment over there, making some repairs on the sewer, and then redesigning that a little bit better so we have more parking in that area for football games and other activities associated with the ball fields between the city and the school. Burke Street will also get paved at $29,000. We're gonna do a section of that, not the full street. We're gonna do the upper portion where kids cross into the area of the school and a little bit beyond that. The reason for that is we'd like to see some changes on Burke Street in the future, potentially turning the rest of Burke Street into a parking lot, but that we have to do some further investigation on that first before we proceed or suggest that. Buffalo Road will also see some attention. There'll be a section of that that's paid at $90,000. Generally speaking, probably from, I believe, I'd have to look at the map again. I'll get you a better idea, because I don't want to tell you the wrong information here. From where we left off last year, or this year I should say, right around the railroad tracks, and then a small section to kind of put in some wedging when you first come up around the ponds of Buffalo Road from the Ann Street area off of the highway there. So that section of road is going to be improved. It'll be a lot nicer for residents there, and we'll continue to improve Buffalo Road as we go. It's a very long road that goes out, and there's not a ton of houses out there, but obviously we're going to try to fix that over time the right way rather than kind of wedge and do some patching like we have in the past. All right, now we move on to the police department. The police department has requested to put in an evidence room. We already have one currently, but the issue is that evidence room doesn't necessarily meet the recommended best practices. Windowless room, single door entry, certain types of shelving, lockable shelving, things of that nature. So we would like to do make an investment of $30,000 to make sure that we can secure evidence properly and secure it safely, especially when it comes to court cases and pending litigation against people who may have committed some crimes. Also like to purchase a police cruiser. The first year purchase would be $38,000, followed by two years of payment of $18,000 coming from the equipment village. Out of the electrical fund, we'd like to purchase a 4x4 3/4 ton pickup truck with plow, funding source from the electric department. The one we currently have would be retired over to the Parks and Rec or the DPW. And that is it. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there's any questions about the capital improvements at all? At your pleasure.
We're paying interest on those vehicles and stuff, right? If we're making payments, we're paying interest.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better just to pay them off right from the get-go?
It would be nice to pay them off, Mr. Mayor, however, I don't believe we could afford to do that.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome, Matt. Okay, anyone else? John?
And is that police cruiser, is that a replacement for an existing, or is that an additional?
That'll be an addition. We have the school resource officer that's tying up the one vehicle majority of the year, so they requested to have one more on hand. And then they'll be cycling one out. It is surprising how many miles those vehicles will put on there day after day after day. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but I don't know the mileage right now, but one's already pushing well over 100, I think, from my last conversation with one of the officers. And we just purchased that vehicle, 2-3 years ago,
Mhm.
so it adds up pretty fast.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll, move on to the, number 2 would be the fee schedule, so. Let's begin with that.
Sure. Mr. Mayor and Council, we haven't had a lot of increases or requests for increases on the fees. If you look through this fee schedule that you've been provided, to the very right of any fees, there would be a bolded number, that's the suggested change. So for instance, on page 7 of 15, I'm looking at the ice arena area. We see ice rental 8:20 AM to 2:30 PM. Monday through Friday was, the price was $120. This year, we're asking to go $130. And you can see that down the line, so there's a few changes there. And I'm just simply explaining how this lays out in this form. There's also a new fee with city right-of-way for $20 in conjunction with water and sewer inspection. That's brand new. And I guess if there's no questions, you can, I mean, if anybody has any questions about any of these changes. Please ask.
I guess.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, or?
I see that, parking tickets are in there, overnight parking tickets, or no? Did I miss that? Are we gonna continue to write overnight parking tickets and not plow the streets when they need to be plowed?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that is a question.
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
I said, are we
Go
gonna
ahead.
continue to write tickets and not plow the streets when they need to be plowed?
I don't understand the question, Mr. Mayor. We write tickets for people who park overnight and we still plow the streets. So I'm unclear what the question is.
I'm talking about winter parking.
So you're saying as in, someone gave a written
If
ticket?
you're giving people tickets for parking on the street, the reason they're getting tickets is because the plows need to come. Right? So we need to send the plows out, and I'm asking if that's the case. Are the plows gonna be out when they need to be out?
That does not.
Mr. Mayor, I can answer the question.
Yeah,
The
go
plows
ahead.
are always out when they need to be out, so I'm unclear what the question still is. I mean, I'm detecting a hint of sarcasm right there, so.
Anyone else? I guess I can just quickly speak for myself. There's one part where, like the ice arena, some services going up in price. I know at the golf course, we've had to, for greens fees and cart fees and such, we've had to make adjustments. We didn't get the members, their yearly memberships didn't go up, but we made adjustment for individuals playing for a day or using a cart, what have you, so, yeah, it's the unfortunate part of life, but, yeah, it's, sometimes places just have to go up to reflect the world we live.
One thing I will note, Mr. Mayor, too, is that those prices are very, they're a lot cheaper than they are in Michigan, or in Marquette.
Okay, so with that, let's move into 2025 city budget.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council, we'll start on page 6. We're gonna go department by department. If anybody has any comments on that, we're not gonna go line item by line item unless somebody has a question specifically about it. So page 6 is city council. I'll state the previous budget, which is this year's, and I'll state the suggested recommended budget for next year. So this year we went at 24,200. Manager is recommending 23,700, so that is a slight decrease over last year. Any questions about city council?
We could probably save some money there, right?
Be minimal in the whole scheme of things, but,
Oh, every penny counts,
I understand that, it's,
right?
so we gotta be,
That's the point of this, every penny counts. It all adds up.
Any questions?
So I, just because I'm curious, so let's say, you know, we allotted $24,200 to the budget last year. The actual budget, the actual amount spent was $81.90.
That was through June.
It was half year.
He's got to pay attention to details, okay. no,
Right on top there.
Disregard my question.
One thing you can,
The column next to that predicts what it's gonna be for the full year.
Okay, so even if we budgeted 500 more, that essentially carries over into this year. or-
so any money that is not spent, it remains in the general fund or whatever fund it originates from. Given that it's not a transfer to another fund. As you can see, good pointing out there, the 24,200, last year we spent 16,000, the previous year 19,000, the previous year before that 17,000. So again, the budget's always a guideline, doesn't mean we have to spend that much money, doesn't mean we will spend that much money. But, we are probably projected to spend less. If you have half of the year at 8,000, we're probably on task to make about 16 to 17,000 this year. So there would be a savings, overall.
And then that just rolls over.
Yep, it stays in the fund, yep.
Very cool.
Are there any other questions on the city council?
How much rolled over last year?
That's unclear because I don't have that number. We only spent 16,000 last year, so the number was probably fairly similar to the 2024 budget. So probably something around $8,000. Right, moving on to the next one, page 7, city manager. Go from $168,000 budget to $176,000 budget. Most of that's attributed to either wage increases or for retirement funds, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, most of these areas where there are employees involved, you'll see the increase in the budget occurs around those areas. And retirement of fees towards their MERS payment or other things of that nature, OPEB, so on and so forth. Are there any questions on the city manager budget? Moving on to the city clerk, go from $79,700 to $89,000. Again, mostly in the pension line item and some personal service increases. Any questions on city clerk?
Is the clerk getting raised next year?
Based on the contract that was signed by the council, this clerk will be getting a raise, correct? Board of review, pretty steady all the time. We always ask for this amount because we don't know what's gonna happen, if there's gonna be extra time, or if all the board members actually show up. So this accounts for if everybody shows up, they get paid, so on and so forth. That budget's been the same since I've been here, $850. Moving on to page 10, city treasurer. From 96,000 to 107,500. Again, pension, personal services. Some overtime.
Is he getting a raise too, or no?
Yep. City assessor, that has, went up a bit, and it hasn't really went up a lot, in the last couple of years. Generally speaking, we've been budgeting around $35,000. However, in the last couple of years, it has gone up, so, we are seeing an increase of that from $35,000 to $42,500. That's paid, contracted to the Marquette County Assessor's Office. This year, we budgeted 99,750. Next year, we're budgeting 86,250. I don't expect this number actually to reach our budget for this year, nor do I truly believe it's gonna meet that for next year. We're in kind of a weird phase where there's a lot of mailing that has to go out now due to absentee ballots and some extra hours, and election laws have changed and election times have changed, and so we're kind of in this weird flux where we're trying to figure out where we're gonna land, and it might take a couple years to figure that out. But the alarm bells from last year are not as loud as they're not as loud as they were in my mind. So hopefully we're gonna see a lower budget number come in at the end of this season. We'll know that probably, I'm assuming probably by the end of November, December. And hopefully we're gonna see a good savings here, cause that number originally had, quadrupled in how much we would have to spend for elections.
Just the early voting requirements,
Part of it, there's a lot of mailing going on.
we designated the township, is that correct?
Some of it, yeah, so
Like
some of
for early
the,
voting,
that
are
helps.
we have to pay for a portion of that as well,
yeah, we
correct?
split a third way,
Okay, that's what I was-
so that helped a lot, but we can't do that all the time, so, we should see some significant savings in the league, so. Anyhow, we see a decrease overall, hopefully we'll be seeing the number come out a lot lower. Any questions about elections? Attorney, it is in several areas, this is just the general fund. You see we budgeted this year $40,000, we're recommending $40,000 for next year. Our actual's up a little bit, we're still going through a couple, things of litigation. Also, we did approve an increase in pay for them, recently this year. And on page 14, City Hall, went from $179,400 to $112,950 for next year. And that has to do with capital outlay, going from $70,000 to $5,000. So there'll be less projects coming out of that pool of money. Moving on to page 15, Police Department. That budget came in this year at, well, it's projected to come in fairly high, but we budgeted $1,150,200. Next year, we are budgeting $1,226,550. Part of this is due to some monies coming in from, well, actually it's higher, I'm sorry, I was reading that wrong. So just increased pay, pension, so on and so forth. And this is if we account for a full staff. I mean, we haven't had a full staff of officers quite some time. It's been hard to fill those positions, and we've had some retirements, we've had some firings happen. We just had 2 new officers come in off of as cadets, so that's good, but we will be having 2 retirements. One ending this year, and I believe the chief of police may be retiring next year as well. Moving on to page 17, Fire Department, 115,000 to 109,000, so that's a decrease.
Does that money, is that just for the firemen, or is that for the building and the whole ball of wax?
So this covers any firefighters that get paid for their service while they're on a call. Covers supplies, trucks and fuel and lube, communication fees, so on and so forth down the line.
So pretty much everything but the building.
Yeah, the building, there's, utilities get paid out of that,
For the building, yeah.
I was just wondering about money for a roof, right? I mean, if we're talking about the fire department, are we talking about the fire hall in general, or are we talking about the equipment inside of it? And the man hours?
So it's man hours, the vehicles themselves are maintained out of this fund. The purchase of the new fire truck we have is coming out of the equipment millage. And then, if it was a roof repair that we would do, it would depend, it could come out of different funds, multiple funds. But we're not doing any repairs or, work on the roof right now, so that's not included in this budget.
I didn't notice anything in all of this for the roof at the fire hall, I know it's in rough shape, so. Just wondering.
Yeah, so the roof at the fire hall is inspected on a regular basis. It does need to be replaced at some time, but it's not in a position where it needs to be replaced right away.
Do we not trust the roofer that was up there working on it, that said the roof is gonna need to be replaced?
We do, and we inspect it on a regular basis, and the roof does not need to be replaced right away.
How many holes does not need to be replaced?
I'm not aware of any holes in the fire hall.
Okay.
Public Works, page number 18. This budget was $650,000 this year, and is at $685,200 next year. Note on here, we have AEDs for $4,000 under the capital outlay. Increase due to pay increases, pension, so on and so forth. Some increases on cost for equipment. We've also increased some of the, utility expenses, so on and so forth, so. Next page, 19, curbs and sidewalk repair. This year we have allocated funding to that. We haven't for the last couple of years, because we've been making repairs with other projects. We kind of rolled those into those projects. That doesn't mean we haven't made repairs, they just might be reflected somewhere else in other areas of the budget. But this time we want to go around and put some of this cash in the hands of our workers that know how to install the sidewalks, so we'll have them go ahead and place some sidewalk. Our hope is we can do this for a couple of years in a row and just continue to replace those parts of the sidewalk that aren't very good. So. Page number 20, alleyway maintenance. On here we have we had a budget of 26,670, we're going to 27,068. Generally speaking, most of that's going towards the, all of it's going, to the alley bond principal and the alley bond interest. I believe we have, I think there's 6 more years after this, if I'm not mistaken, it might be 7 after this. Check real quick to see.
It goes to 2032.
2032, okay. Next page, 21, engineering services. We budgeted 0 in 2024. This year we're budgeting $5,000 for some miscellaneous engineering services that we'll need to farm out. Page 22, street lighting, standard budgeting. We have 26,000, we're going to 28. The ebb and flows depending on how many lights we have on and if they're all working, so on and so forth. Street maintenance, budgeted $9,000 this year, and we're recommending $11,000 for next year. That's just general maintenance. And street maintenance is not just simply the street maintenance, it's all throughout this entire budget, so there's lots of things that touch streets, just so you're aware. Bridges and culverts, we budgeted $2,000 this year, we're budgeting $4,000 next year. This generally involves inspections for the bridge out by the cemetery. Traffic control, nothing budgeted for this year. Snow and ice control on this page shows we budgeted 0 for it. However, that's being moved under the Act 51 major street fund, I believe. So that gets moved to another location. Is that
The
correct?
salt storage barn? Is that what you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't see the final number here. I see
The salt
number.
storage barn was deleted from the budget.
Yes, that was the
Yep.
lead from the budget.
Yep.
What we're gonna end up doing there is we're going to have that engineered as a structure, either this year or next year. And then depending on how the budget is, we'll look at constructing one. If the budget numbers are looking good, we'll look at constructing one maybe midsummer if we have a good number come back for the construction of the salt barn.
Do we have any idea what a salt barn costs?
Nope, the engineer will help us figure that out. Yep. Landfill, we budgeted this year $422,000, we're budgeting $435,000, and those just have to do with the fees that, our contract through GFL charges us, tipping fees at the landfill, so on and so forth, so we don't really have too much control on that.
Does that contract expire with GFL?
I believe we have one more year, yep, if I'm not mistaken on that, so.
Thanks.
Cemetery fund, page 28, we had budgeted 131,625. This year, we're budgeting 162,400 this year. So the pillars, again, are in here under the capital outlay, and that,
That should actually be,
That should- that's
that
not-
should be moved from repairs to capital outlay, I think.
yeah.
Yep, I'll make a note of that.
Thank you, yeah, that'll be under capital outlay, that's what I was seeing here. So that's why you see an increase there. We tried doing it before, but the project was so small last time, nobody would pick it up. So we're gonna try again, and see if we can find somebody that wants to work with us on that. Special events, we budgeted 22,025, this year we're budgeting, or next year budgeting 31,900. That just covers for, our DPW staff to assist with different events of the community, like Pioneer Days, Happy Lunta, or other events people might be holding in the community. Page 30, planning and zoning, went from 96,350 to 101,800. One thing you'll see in here, a little bit of it, well, I should say about a $10,000 increase, as blight enforcement, for the potential tear downs or demolition of, blighted buildings beyond repair. Moving on to page 31, general fund, library, went from 97,205 to 117,530. Did a increase to the salary of the, librarian. Had a conversation with her, and she's, generally speaking, grossly underpaid based on her peers at the same size library in our area and throughout the state of Michigan, so that's one thing you'll see an increase on. Moving on to page 32, parks, went from 86,000 to 116,900. Increased our repairs and maintenance budget significantly. That's the biggest increase you'll see there.
Anything in specifically that we're planning on working?
No,
on, or
not
is it-
specifically, there's just general items across the board. Whether they all can get taken care of is the question. We'll see how that goes. Page 33, ice arena, our budget from this year was 221,828. That's gonna go to 235,496. There'll be some slight increases to office equipment and some slight increases, just to office equipment, I'm sorry. Some repairs and maintenance money we're looking at too. And then I believe, and Ann, I don't know if you have this at your fingertips, I think next year might be the last year for the Zamboni, or maybe we got 27, I can't remember.
Zamboni is November 1st, 2025.
Oh, good deal. So we'll save some money there next year that could either be recycled into the ice arena or that stays into the general fund. Moving on to page 34, recreation, went from 59,525 to 56,825, so we saw a small decrease in that. Going on to page 35, other general government charges, so we got just a number of items here. We had a budget item of $1,174,857. We're requesting $923,932. Generally speaking, the lion's share of that overall cost is the hospitalization insurance in the general fund accounts, which comes across nearly every single employee. to some degree. There's other ones that are in other departments, so. You also see our payment for the pension MERS corrective plan that we have to do for a number of years. I think we have a few more years on that. Other than that, nothing too crazy. There's no major projects happening next year, like Jackson Mine Playground or Macomb Field, none of that type of stuff is happening, so. It appears that there is a 15% increase. I see a notation of hospitalization,
Yeah.
so.
But that's not final yet.
Yeah, that's not final. We'll play that by ear. We might, that ebb and flow sometimes. Generally speaking, we've been fairly lucky in our projections with hospitalization, except for 1 year in 2022. So we'll see what happens here, whether that number actually pans out what we're saying.
That jives with what I've been hearing.
Yeah, so
With most
hopefully not.
renewals, it's not looking good.
Yeah, that's what I heard in a couple of conferences too, so. General fund transfers, we're looking at, this time around, we did 216,000 projected. And then, we haven't done those yet. And then next year, we're projecting 175,400. That would be, 150,400 going to the streets, local streets, and then 25,000, of ARPA funds that we are holding, for a facade grant, potentially, a holdover for $25,000. If that is not necessary, then we'll strike that from the budget if it, is extended, before we approve the budget. So if not, we just won't spend it we'll spend it next year. Major streets, we're gonna pass revenues, because revenues are not necessarily important. We're gonna go page 39. We're gonna go to routine street maintenance. We have in here budgeted, this year, 114,460, next year we got 137,500. So a slight increase, across the board, as you can see. We have page 40, traffic control, budget this year at 12,250, recommending 15,500 there, so there's a slight increase in cost on that side. Major streets, snow and ice control, 2024, we budgeted $389,000, next year we're asking for $391,000. So a slight increase there. And then we just have some administrative bookkeeping stuff that we have to go through. That's budgeted at $91,800. We're asking for $81,800 next year. Trunk line maintenance, it's a highway that runs through town here in 28, Business Route 28. This year we had it 28,255. Next year we're asking for 25,200. One thing I will note, as we do work on major streets and locals and state trunk line, we do get reimbursed certain amounts of funds from the state of Michigan for work that we do. So that is helpful. The more work we have on the streets, the more money we can get back from the state receivably, so. Trunk line on major streets, this year we had at 19,225. Next year, we're asking for 15,100. Winter trunk line on M28 Business Road. This year, we asked for 67,250. Next year, we're asking for 70,250. So a slight increase there. Major streets, vehicle maintenance, we budgeted 266,600. Next year, we're asking for 191,700. Major street capital outlay is, this is related to, equipment. We have the lower payment of $60,000 in 2020, until 2029. That will be coming out of this fund and other various funds. We have the salt shed permit and design at $11,000. We moved the DPW plow, so that was struck from this part of the budget, moved under the equipment millage. And then we have a safe routes to school final design for engineering services for $30,000. There is a grant associated with that supposedly not supposed to talk about, so, not with the media, if that makes sense. Otherwise, supposedly it's at risk, so if you wanna ask me about that later, then we can do that. There's been no official announcement on that. All right, so that went from $145,000 this year to $101,000 next year. Local streets, we're passing revenues, we're passing expenses, we're moving to page 50 on that. And this is routine street maintenance. We went from 111,150 to 110,150, so a slight decrease. Traffic control,
Do we have less streets that need to be fixed, or?
I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical question, Mr. Mayor.
It's a simple question. Do we have less streets that need to be fixed?
I'll answer the
I
question.
would say the answer is no.
I would say yes, because we've been fixing streets for the last 5 years since I've been here. We just fixed 13 of them 2 years ago. So is there less streets for us to fix? Yes, there is, of course, because we just did 13 of them. So moving on,
We're
Mr. Mayor.
slashing the budget.
But we still have a lot of there's a lot of mileage and streets in Donegall that we gotta deal with, so.
Yep.
Pecking away at it, so.
So this is $10,000 less than last year. And as we have to do less maintenance on our streets and alleyways, we will spend less money on them. There are, of course, more streets we have to fix, but this is not going to pave the street, because that's not what routine maintenance is. Any other questions?
This is $1,000 less.
I'm sorry, did I read that wrong?
Just making sure.
Oh,
we're
yes,
all-
yes,
all spent.
$1,000, thank you, yes, that's $1,000 last year. Moving on to page 51, traffic control. This year we budgeted $16,850, next year we're recommending $14,300. Moving on to page 52, snow and ice control. This year we asked for $267,930, next year we're asking for $256,950. Then we have administrative and bookkeeping, at $73,500 this year, and a request for $70,000 next year. And that concludes the general fund. We'll be moving into the electric fund next. On page 56. Customer billing. This year, we were at $145,000 requested. Next year, we're asking for $150,600. So a slight increase there.
We have to pay credit card fees on that?
We do pay credit card fees. I do have Brian here, the treasurer. Brian, would you explain how the credit card fees work and how we handle that?
Yeah, so the company that we use, Paymentus, they handle the credit card transactions themselves, and then they charge us for those fees. At the tail end of the COVID era, we decided to shift to a model that we absorb those fees instead of charging them to the residents. So we started a rate study essentially that said we should charge this month's extra to cover those credit card fees.
So along with the short of it, it is covered, but then it also gives folks a little bit easier way to pay their payments. Before, you couldn't go into City Hall and get a credit card and all that stuff. You had to do like an online thing, so.
That's just for utility payments, right?
Utility pay, well, I don't know if we actually take payments for other stuff, for credit cards.
So you can pay your taxes with,
It's not the same exact setup, but you can, there is a fee.
yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, so, any other questions with the customer billing? Okay, moving on to page 57, administrative general expenses, and that total is on page 58, and that request for this year was $1,404,248. Next year, we were asking for $1,123,687. So that is a decrease overall. You'll note in here, we do have, we have a loan payment built in here. I think it's carried over.
It's not in this section.
It's not in this
Oh, yeah, it
section.
is, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
I
sorry,
was gonna
sorry,
say.
50,000 at the very bottom.
If you recall, we did, it was authorized by the council to borrow $500,000 from WPPI. We have not acted on that yet, but when we do act on that, we'll have to pay $50,000 back, for 10 years. that'll pay that loan back. And then there's a little tiny bit of a charge on it, I don't think there's interest included in that, I think that's interest-free. You have the substation payment already built in here like we have been doing, but one of the things you'll see that's gonna be most significant will be a decreased payment to UPCO for wheeling charges, which will help us recover some of the cost of building the substation and other costs associated with operating our electrical department. So that, we don't know when that's gonna happen, we don't know when,
We built in 3 months worth
3 months
on
done
page
right now.
59.
We're hoping that by April, fingers crossed, that the substation will be actually operational in March. But again, like you do at your home, you use the electricity first, then you get billed for it, so we'll get billed in April for that payment, so. So that's good, we'll see a decrease there. Purchase of power, this year we asked for $2,457,962. Next year, we're seeing a decrease in cost for power. Part of that, is a decrease overall, at one of the conferences that I attended, showed that power decreases are going down, so we're hoping that trend, not necessarily going down, but they're stabilizing, and they're not going as high as they thought they were gonna go.
And UPCO's coming out of that,
And UPCO's coming out of that.
that payment that you got.
Yeah, that payment will be up, so. Electric fund, page 60, distribution expense. So that total is on page 61, at $1,236,825. Next year, we're asking for $2,129,282. And that's to cover the aerial truck payment, which we have for a couple more years. AMI expenses, as you saw in the meters, partial payment to pay for the loader we purchased, a downtown underground study for putting some of our lines underground, high school upgrades, which is still a carryover that we weren't able to do this year. We're waiting on a specific piece of equipment. The pickup plow is in this as well. And then we have a couple items in here, partial payment for the DPW plow, if you guys approve that, a pole study, and then a substation reclosure to have on hand in case something were to happen at one of our reclosures. So that's all projected to come out here. Whether we spend all that and actually get all that stuff, that's another question, so. Any questions on that part of the budget? All right, we're closing out of the electric fund into the wastewater fund. So we're gonna pass revenues and expenses here, and we're gonna move into the meat of it on page 64. On sanitary sewers expenditures. Last year, we asked for $1,058,875, this year we're asking for $1,108,900. And that will include, some capital outlay expenditures, Cambria survey, partial loader payment, partial plow payment, 2025 sewer project, engineering fees, for the, projected and proposed, USDA Phase 1 sewer project. There'll be, some requests to pay for some lift station repairs at Ann Street Lift Station, Cambria Lift Station, and the Tracy Lift Station. Any questions there? Moving on to page 65, account and collections. We asked for $67,150 this year. We're asking for $69,320 this year, so a slight increase to that. Administration and general expenses. This year we asked for $1,512,000, $1,512,793. Next year, we're asking for $1,211,242. There'll be a decrease to the de minimis transfer to general fund. That's one of the significant decreases there. And we also backed out of here OPEB expense, and that has to do with some new accounting principles that are kind of being developed as we speak. For years, we put that in there, but now we've backed that out of there. That also was backed out of the electric fund, and we'll back out of the water fund as well. So you'll see a significant decrease in overall cost. So for example, last year, we had allocated $310,000, we don't actually spend that money. It's something we had to put on the books to show that we owed a liability. For some reason now, we're not having to show that, so it shows as a net decrease overall. Any questions on this part? Now we're moving into the water fund. We're gonna pass the revenues and expenses again. We're gonna go right into page 69. Power and pumping. Last year we asked, or excuse me, this year we asked for 3,500, next year we're asking for 3,000, so a slight decrease. Drinking water asset management, last year we asked for 134,800, this year we're asking for 268,100. The increase to that has to do with engineering services. We have some work we have to do in that area still. Moving into water meters. This year was 15,800 we requested. Next year we're asking for 12,600, so a slight increase there. Transmission and distribution. We were requesting 1,010,600 this year. Next year we are requesting 841,556 this year. And so there'll be some preparation on Chippewa and Iroquois for soil borings for $15,000, and preparation for our US Phase 2 water project. And if the water project passes council's approval, we'll be moving forward to commence that project in 2026 through 2027, so it'll be a 2-year project. You see AMI meters in here, so the valve replacement as I've indicated on the CIP. We have a loader payment, partial, and partial payment as well. Any questions? Page 74, customer accounts and collections. Last year we asked for 70,550. Next year we're asking for 75,225, so a slight increase there. Then we're into administrative, and general expenses. This year we asked for 983,222. Next year we're asking for 973,458. So a slight decrease there as well. Downtown Development Authority, or DDA, budget for 2024 was 111,500. And that will decrease to 87,500. I just want to point that out on the revenue side of things. And the expenditures themselves, we don't have a total here for last year's budget, but through June, we spent $51,000. I think we're probably like 100 something because we have some grants we gave out as well. So this will have to get totaled up. We'll have that total for you guys next time. But next year, we're only asking for $59,000, so there'll be a significant decrease in expenditures from the DDA. Any questions on the DDA side? Senior Center, we're gonna pass the revenues and go right to expenditures. Senior Center, last year, we asked for 447,772. This year, we're asking for 359,900. So there was a decrease in senior trips. I don't know if we're just not, are we not including that in there anymore? I don't see the senior trips in here. Or did she not provide that yet?
Senior trips are in there, but she only put $2,000 for it.
Okay, so we'll have a better number on that. I don't feel that number is quite accurate, so, but she might still be calculating that right now, and I know that she's off on a senior trip right now with the seniors.
Yeah, because she's got 65,000 in revenues coming in.
Yeah, so I think it's probably gonna be around the same amount of money, roughly about $60,000 or so. So we'll get that feedback from her, and we'll make sure we get that information in there, just make a notation there. Any questions about the senior center? Okay, moving on to page 81, expenditures from the city improvement fund. Last year, we asked for 41,814, this year we're asking for 44,832. You'll see a cost from LSCP in here, the Weston Economic Hub of 5,000, MML, QPAD, generally speaking, a lot of our, membership has come out of this fund. Moving on.
Farmers markets and.
Yeah, farmers markets in there too, yeah, part-time salaries there. Moving on to page 83, salvage inspection fund, this is just like, a lot of these are kind of like your very small funds, it's in and out. So, somebody pays us or the state pays us a little bit of money. So we're expecting $1,000, we're requesting $1,000. Page 85, under drug forfeiture, we've received nothing for many, many years, so we project a 0 on that. Library state aid, we, are projected to, we requested $6,000 to spend this year, we're requesting $8,500 next year, so slight increase there for, excuse me for 1 second, please. Slight increase for new books. New books, generally speaking, so. Law enforcement, and this has to do with, some state grants that came in, so we're only projecting to get $1,000 from that to come in, $1,000 expenditure. Crime and prevention is another money, a little tiny bit of money we get to, so $1,000 in, $1,000 out. Moving on to page 93. Cemetery fund, which is the perpetual care fund, if I'm not mistaken. So you will see $30,000 budgeted, this year. You will see a significant decrease, as I mentioned, because we have to put money back into that fund, so only $3,500. That money will just most likely carry over to either expenditures used in this senior center fund or just get absorbed into the general fund, which is the same fund that the the cemetery fund is funded by, so. Page 95, building improvement fund, you'll see the library carpet in there. This year we asked for $12,000. Next year we're asking for $5,000. And then the Parks and Recreation millage that we have, we're expected to bring in $117,000 this year. And pardon me, Mr. I have a question for the treasurer. Is that final number, you believe, or is that the taxes out there?
For which one?
Page 96.
I think our numbers are a little bit different on these sheets. What?
Okay, we're at 112, we projected 117, so that's a little bit lower. Okay, sometimes some taxes aren't paid, but, that might just be the projections, but we are projected to bring $125,000 in next year. And then so what we asked to spend from that, we budgeted $117,000 this year, we're asking to spend $125,000 next year, so it's kind of an in and out scenario. Equipment millage, this year we budgeted to come in $194,000 roughly. Next year, we're projecting about the same, $193,000, a slight decrease, whether that's true or not. We projected to spend out of that fund this year $194,000. Next year, we're projected and requesting to spend $170,579, which would be payment of $76,879 to the new fire truck pumper we purchased, rental of a street sweeper, $10,000 partial payment for a loader, the 1/3 payment towards the new police vehicle, which includes the equipment, and then a payment towards the pending plow for next meeting at $27,700. And then our municipal street millage is projected to bring in $241,000. So that's the monies that we use to pave streets. And we are projected to bring in next year $258,180. This year, we request to spend $120,000 of that. Excuse me, $120,000 budgeted. Next year, we are requesting to spend $245,000. Again, that will help with the 2025 street sewer project. monies to, that's not correct. Oh, I see what we mean, okay, I didn't get the breakdown here, $240,000, so we got Burt Street at 29,000, West Prince Street at 30, Hungerford at 55, East Arch Street at 36,000, and Buffalo Road at 90,000. Vista Theater project, revenues are still roughly about $2.7 million for next year. We have not received all the money from the state, that's a reimbursable grant. And we're projected to spend all that money. We're actually not gonna spend all that money next year, I don't think, because this is gonna be a project that carries through to 2026. Ending on 2026, so we'll see how much of that money we actually spend. And we do believe there'll be some additional funding coming from other sources, which will just carry over into the revenue side of things as that project progresses. Any questions, Mr. Mayor?
An opportunity to go through the pages, so. Anyone? Okay, so with that,
So, our next budget meeting is, so this is how the sequence of events will happen. Next week, we're gonna have a hearing on the budget, so folks can make comments, they get a chance to review it. We'll hopefully have a more updated version, there's a few changes that Ann will make and get that on the, online. The public hearing is for the public to come out and talk about it, of course, they can talk at any of these meetings as well. So that public hearing will be completed next week, and then we'll have probably one more session, that's traditionally what we do, unless the council wants to have another session after that. The session that we're looking at is
The 24th.
the 24th, so you'll be notified. We'll come back here again with the changed budgets, and then we'll just simply ask if there's any questions anybody has on the budget that they're receiving. We will not be going through it again like we did department by department, unless you have very specific questions about something, then we'll hit that up. And then it'll go to council in November, the regular meeting for adoption. Any questions about that process, Mr. Mayor?
seems cut and dry to me. More questions? Okay, I guess that brings us to, number 7. Public comment, 3-minute limit, so same rules as the first time, you step up the podium and, you got 3 minutes.
Kristen Beaumont, 7 West Park Street. I just wanted to address a couple things because I guess it goes with the budget, that's why I want to talk about it. I know it was recently said that there's, like the landfill is something that needs to be addressed. And I know there's a composting program in Ishmaeling, Partridge Creek. And I was just wondering if there was a way to, there was a couple things on the budget that I was questioning. I just even heard you brought up that there was like 20,000 extra in the Parks and Recs that you weren't even sure if you're gonna be able to use that for, like you will have time to do it. To look into like grants to like match that money. I don't know how all this works, so I'm sorry if I'm like speaking out of turn. I'm just like wondering if there's a way to maybe incentivize, I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like the residents to sign up for the composting program by giving a discounted rate by getting this, like putting money, like getting this grant towards this program and like maybe paying like an upfront cost to Partridge Creek and say this is what the city of Degaunny is gonna pay and then to get the residents to get involved, because I know they're looking to get more business as well, so that could be a win-win for them. It could also, I looked it up, it looks like it could be a 30% reduced rate of waste going to the landfill, so that could hopefully hold off some time then at the landfill, and then it could, I was also hearing about how there's a renewing of the contract to see if maybe we could actually get a contract that's less money because there's maybe less garbage. Like, I don't know how that all works too, but if that could be a way to then get that contract to be less, we're composting, win-win, everything's kind of a win-win for this. So it's just something that I wanted to, I don't know if it's too late, but something to like consider and something to look into. And then I also just wanna mention the cemetery budget, just to see about, thank you. To see about that, maintenance with the North Country, Tree Company removal as more of maintenance instead of removal. And I was just wondering if that was like a part of the budget and if he has to bid or not, so that's more of a question, but we can talk about it another time. I just wanted to bring that up as the maintenance part that was talked about earlier this summer, so that's it, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. Okay, let's move on, go to council comments. So Kevin, you wanna start us off?
Nothing for me.
Yeah, Craig?
Great turnout on Saturday. It was this past Saturday, maybe? Yeah, right, great job speaking to the community. Unbelievable amount of people, like floating around the gun on Saturday, that was really neat to see. Nice job on the firefighter statue memorial park there, that's pretty awesome, so. I think we're making some really good strides in this town, anytime you drive around, it's amazing what we're doing there. Proud of us, proud of what we're doing.
Thank you. Matt?
I guess I got nothing, thank you.
Okay. Toby?
I'll echo Craig's comments. That was a great turnout Saturday for the ribbon cutting downtown. I was surprised how many people showed up for that. It's a, you know, kudos to city staff and all parties involved in the downtown, project. As far as the budget goes, you know, we got a good first draft going here. I think the good news for residents right now is, you know, based on the fee schedules, it's a minimal increase to utilities. So I don't see that this is gonna be a burden by any means. That's all I really have. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments on Fall Fest and the ribbon cuttings and whatnot this past weekend, and also wanted to extend special thanks to the fine folks at Campfire Coffee who really kind of led that effort, and the DDA for their support of that event. And then I would agree and echo Toby's sentiments on the budget. I really also appreciate the executive summary that the city manager prepared. It's very enlightening and makes it easy to digest at a high level. I'd agree that things are looking real rosy for this coming year.
For myself, I'll go back to Fall Fest. It was a real great turnout. It was nice that I was in the high 70s, low 80s. That kind of helps. I had kind of confused it for July, not September. But it was a great show up or show out. It's just nice to see people walking around having a good time. And so on that, I'll stop on that. But city manager and I, we went to a MML meeting or a conference that was on Thursday and Friday, and had all these different city managers come in from throughout the UP, and it was amazing. The kudos and the open eyes of them, when they're like, I can't believe Negaunee is looking the way you are, and they just kept going on and about that, and it was really nice to hear. And we're going in a good direction. People in town are appreciating it, but also people out of town are appreciating it. And giving them more drive and incentive to come back into town and enjoy what we have to offer. So that was nice to see. So I guess on that, I'll stop on that. So, Mr. City Manager?
The only thing I have for council there is if anybody has any questions about the budget, before we have our next budget session, feel free to reach out to Ann to set up a meeting, or call if you have a question specifically about anything that might be questionable or piques your curiosity or whatever it may be. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're on to city attorney tonight, so that's eliminates me from asking him to comment, so I guess with that, can I get a motion to adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
And Matt was first, Toby second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.